Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. It's a lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you.
Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world, and welcome to tonight's live stream. Wow, what a cracker we had last night. We've got something like 20,000 views on the Colonel Wynand du Toit interview from last night on YouTube, and not much less than that on lovinglifetv.com, which is really taking off. And I'm so happy that a lot of people who've just been guests in the past are now registering and joining, getting our daily update email as to what's coming up on Loving Life and what videos we've posted on Loving Life. Obviously, we can post stuff on lovinglifetv.com, which is our own platform that we are prohibited from posting on YouTube, also known as Censorship City. Okay, now let's get on to tonight. In South Africa today, there appears to be an eerie calm as the South African media report less and less on ongoing truck hijackings, looting, murder, rapes, and burnings. Today, it's all about the scale. In South Africa, or is South Africa becoming safer under lockdown, or is lockdown just a political ploy for Ramaphosa to retain his position as president, regardless of the cost to the nation? It all seems so surreal today, doesn't it? Even here in Australia, I've just put up a video here on lovinglifetv.com, where one positive COVID case can bring an entire state of millions of people into instant lockdown, with demands from the media that people do the right thing and get vaccinated. That is the carrion call right now. The world is a mess, and the World Economic Forum is trying to roll out its Great Reset. Tonight I talked to Rake Jeeves about the anarchy taking place in South Africa following the collapse of the South African Police Service. Please remember to subscribe to Loving Life on YouTube to be kept informed, and register on lovinglifetv.com, the platform we are transitioning to. If you have a question for Rake, rather, please ask it in the side chat. I'll get Rake on. Here we go. Hi, Rake. Hi, Rake.
Scott, can you hear me?
I can indeed. Hi, and I can see you too, which is a relief. I thought I wasn't going to see you.
Yeah, I had a lot of problems with Skype, so I actually had to just delete the whole thing off my system
Wow.
and reinstall it.
Yeah.
And then it kept telling me, giving me messages that Skype itself was down, so I got very worried. But anyway, here we are.
Here we are. That's the main thing. Exactly. Now, Rake, for those people who haven't met you before, now we have actually spoken a couple of times on live streams on Loving Life, but give a bit
Yeah,
of your background in South Africa, your relevant background when it comes to security forces and the police and stuff like that. Just a 5 minute overview of your background.
sure, Scott. For those of you that don't know me, I did my military service like most other people, and from there, for a large part of my life, most of it, I was involved in security companies. I did a short stint in real estate, and that about 13 years ago, I kind of didn't like the direction that South Africa was going in. So instead of thinking about leaving, I honestly believed that I was one of those sort of very patriotic South Africans that believed we could turn things around. So I started an organization called Community Orientated Policing. It actually started off, we called it Bluff Crime Committee or something to that effect. But anyway, it eventually turned into Community Orientated Policing, COP for short. So everybody just called it COP. So I did that for 10 years. It was all on a voluntary basis, but we managed to grow the organization to what was known then as one of the most successful and biggest community policing organizations in South Africa, to the point where I had the MEC of safety and security, the mayor of Durban, the city manager, etc., etc., and just went on. Actually, gave us awards for what we had done and everything else. But typical politicians, they had seen how successful it was, and they were all like, okay, we're going to roll this out across the country and this and that. And that was just political speak. We never heard from them again. But to cut a long story short, I don't think as civilians we could have fought any harder against crime. And it was a turning point. There were two turning points for me. I'd been doing it for nearly 10 years. A friend of mine that actually qualified to immigrate, his wife kept asking him, begging him to immigrate. She was scared. And he was steadfast in his position that no, the usual thing that we all used to say, and excuse the language, when the shit hits the fan, I'll immigrate. What happened there was very sad. He went to the shops one Saturday morning, and when he got back, his front door was all smashed in and everything. He went in to find his wife had been raped multiple times.
Oh, God.
So she survived, and they immigrated shortly after that. When I went to see him, the look on his face is just burnt into my memory, because they kind of got to live with that now, which is, I think, probably the most terrible thing to live with. The second turning point for me was I was invited to the mayor's crime in Durban, and I went along there, and there were so many different crime fighting organizations there, security companies, police, etc. And speaker after speaker got up, and basically we all had the same story, really, that if we fight hard enough, we can turn things around and this and that. And to be quite honest, I was starting to get, I was tiring of hearing that same story over and over, even from myself. The last speaker of the day was a professor in criminology. I'll never forget him. Small, sort of very skinny little guy. And he stood up and he said, look, as much as he applauds what we were all doing, we cannot win this fight against crime. And he gave a whole lot of reasons, and obviously poverty, unemployment, etc., all came into it. When he was finished his speech, I was maybe angry, but I realized afterwards that I was angry because he was right. That this fight, without the government actually doing anything about it, was impossible to win. Yes, it helped a lot, but daily in my suburb, it was just, no matter how hard we fought, it was just crime after crime after crime. And it was like trying to hold a tidal wave back. So I still didn't decide to immigrate, Scott. I thought, okay, I was fortunate that I had a British passport. So I thought, okay, let me go across to the UK and just have a look, So it was more like a fact-finding mission. But I set it up so that I could go back to South Africa quite easily or stay in the UK, because I thought if I liked what I saw, I didn't then want to have to fly all the way back to South Africa, finalize everything, and then fly back to the UK. And I did write an article for a Facebook group that is all South Africans that are immigrating. They asked me to write my story. And to cut a long story short, after 2 months, I'm in Cornwall in the UK. So, we don't talk about big cities because big cities are different. I'm in a very rural area. And after 2 months, I knew I couldn't return back to South Africa because I had seen something that I'd never seen, well, hadn't seen since we were kids, kids playing in the parks and on the beaches by themselves. Females walking dogs late at night by themselves and things like that. So that's sort of my short story of how I came to end up in the UK.
Well, I have to say that in Australia, it's the same, except when we have these stupid lockdowns. I mean, we can walk in the park at any time of the night. I don't lock my front door. We don't have security fences or CCTV cameras.
No.
I mean, there's very little crime. But the stupidity of the government and the complicity of the fake mainstream media is quite extraordinary, the role they're playing. Now, Rake, you mentioned you lived in Durban. Now,
yeah, on the bluff.
Yeah. Now, what are your thoughts and how did you respond to this incredible amount of looting and burning and rioting that took place in Durban just a few weeks ago?
Scott, you know what happened? I was actually sitting in the lounge right where I'm sitting here, and I didn't know that for the first couple hours. I really didn't know that was all going on. And my wife came through to me and she said to me, "My God, have you seen what's happening in South Africa?" And so I said, no, I haven't seen the news, And she said to me, they're rioting and burning and it's just chaos. And I thought to myself, I'm not surprised. We could see this kind of thing coming. And anyway, then I went onto the news and had a look and everything, and I was horrified at the scale of it. But I wasn't surprised. People had been talking about this, the old saying that I mentioned earlier, when the shit hits the fan. And I said to my wife, this is it, the shit has hit the fan,
Yeah.
in the real sense of the word. So I wasn't surprised that it had happened. I was shocked at the scale of what happened. But when I look at it, and everybody has a different opinion, Ramaphosa says it was an attempted coup or an insurrection or whatever. I don't believe that at all. I think he's just playing on sympathy again. He'll probably start asking the rest of the world for money because of it, like the other 500 billion that went missing. So my take on it was sort of organized, I think, in the beginning, probably all around Zuma, but then it just turned into crime. And people's brains work strangely, because if we call it looting, if I said to you a shop was looted down the road, you would say, gee whiz, that's bad. If I said to you 50 robbers ran into a shop and robbed the place blind and intimidated the owners of the shop, you would say that's absolutely terrible, that's disgusting. So the word looting actually plays down what happened, because those were mass robberies that were taking place. You know, theft if there was no one in the property, robbery if there was someone in the property. So a large part of it was crime driven, whether there were any crime syndicates behind it or not, I don't know. But watching Colonel du Toit last night on your show, he made a hell of a lot of sense, and it was something that I hadn't looked into. And that was the fact that certain items were looted. The general criminals, because everybody, I don't care who they were, if you were an ordinary person and then you suddenly took part in the looting, you are now a criminal. So the general criminals were just after anything they could get their hands on, including TVs and stuff. But it seems that there was an element there that were targeting certain things, like Colonel du Toit said.
Well, food that lasts forever. Long-lasting food.
Non-perishable food.
Yeah.
We all know about the 1.5 million rounds of ammunition that went missing. And why did they go to tire warehouses and steal tires? Yeah. They seem to target that as well, you know. So I think there's three things happened there. One was political. One, there was criminal syndicates behind it. And then the third one is, I think, a lot more sinister. And I think South Africa's heading for a lot of trouble. And I agree with Colonel du Toit. I agree with General Isaac that South Africa, as we kind of knew it, is really finished. Okay, it's gone. And people need to prepare themselves for what's coming. I can't say what's coming. People often ask me if I believe there's civil war coming. I don't know that it's going to be a civil war in that sense of the word. But whatever's brewing is bad, you know.
Yeah, we'll come to that. We'll come to that in a second, Rake. Yeah. I would like to make the point that with the looting, I'm going to use the word looting, that took place in Durban, in these warehouses. Apparently, what happened was the night before the mass looting happened with the masses, these teams of people went in who were very, very structured, knew exactly what they were going to steal. They went in, they broke in, they took the stuff that they wanted, and then on WhatsApp they would say, hey, this warehouse has been broken open, go and do your bit, you know, go and steal. And they would leave these doors wide open, and that's when the masses the next morning would come in and steal all the other stuff. But the night before, and this happened with several warehouses, the groups who were actually picking and choosing what they wanted, and it all had to do with I guess preparing for this insurrection. They picked only stuff like gas stoves and gas, and you know the kind of things you need when there's no electricity. They knew, they had it like a shopping list when they broke in, and that's what they stole. Like with that warehouse where they only stole non-perishable foods so that they'd have food for a long time. That is incredibly disturbing. But the thing that really came out of all this was the absolute lack of, or missing in action of the South African Police Service. Where the hell were they?
Yeah, Scott, that's one side that just absolutely horrified me. I know at each police station you've got a few good members still, and I'm sure they fought as hard as possible. I mean, there were some police stations that ran out of ammunition, which, yeah, I mean, I just shake my head because how on earth is it possible for the police to run out of ammunition and for the public to raise money to buy them ammunition? The What has shocked me even more now is, and it just shows you what type of person Ramaphosa is that he kept Sele on as police minister even after that happened. So like we keep saying, there are good policemen left, but generally the police force is just in an absolute mess. I mean, it's disgusting and it's embarrassing, and I honestly feel for the older police that have retired, the ones like General Isaac and that, when they remember what our police force was compared to what it is now, it must be terrible for them, So yeah, the police force is in a mess, the army's in a mess, and they moved the Minister of Defence sideways and then promoted her to Speaker of Parliament. So yeah, I can't see any end to this. I can't see. It's a terrible thing to say, but I'm sure most people agree with me. I can't see any good coming of this. Like, I try and rack my brain and go, what if they employed another 50,000 policemen and trained them properly under the current ruling party? That's not going to happen. I mean, they cut the police budget by 4 billion. If I stand to be corrected, I think it was 4 billion.
And they increased their personal security at the VIP level by billions of rand. Ramaphosa now has almost like an army walking around him when he goes anywhere. It's absolutely ridiculous. This is not people serving the people or ANC ministers serving the people. This is ANC ministers using the people. And of course, that never comes out.
I mean, it's the only word that comes to mind for what's happened is insane. You've got South Africa, which has the highest crime rate in the world. People can play with stats and say, well, it's got the second highest crime rate in the world, in whichever way you want to put it. It's one of the most violent countries in the world, and they cut the police budget. To me, it was, I kind of look at it and go, no, this has all been done on purpose if you look at everything.
And then they also changed the gun laws so that self-defense is no longer a reason for having a gun license. But I just want to address the side chat for a moment. We've got about 400 people watching across the two platforms. It's on YouTube and on lovinglifetv.com.
Sure.
And I just want to remind people, if they got questions for Rake, please just put them in the side chat. Make sure that you put Loving Life in front of your question. Garnet made an interesting comment in the side chat. He said, the bluff was safe. This is during the looting, because we are rough and tough from the bluff.
Yeah, that's an old bluff saying. In fact, it used to go further than that. The older bluff guys used to say, we rough and tough, we from the bluff, we smoke that stuff, that's what it was. But if I can just say, how's it to Garnet? Scott, I know. Again, I still remember saying the same thing last live stream. I won't mention his first name, but I was good friends with Garnet. I got to know him very well, and I tell you what, the guy's been through a hard time, and yet I see that he's still strong. He's encouraging people to do what they must, and I think a lot of people could take a lot of strength from Garnet. So Garnet, my friend, well done. Honestly, I'll take my hat off to you.
Yeah, well, Garnet is a long-term member of the Loving Life family, and he's one of our moderators on the side chat. Now, getting back to the South African Police Service. Okay, I think this is the elephant in the room. Because what you've got is you've got what I call the Shladi Mutseneng of the Ramaphosa ministry, Bekesele, who only has a teaching diploma, running a
Well, Scott,
critical. Yeah, carry on.
sorry, I just want to interrupt there. You say he's got a teaching diploma. From what I could see, it was actually a nursery school teaching
It is. It's a primary
thing.
school.
So it's not even like a yeah. Anyway, sorry.
But this
You
guy
carry
is
on. So,
supposed to be running the police service. I mean, really, you've got to be joking. And the only reason he's there is because he's in the Ramaphosa camp. So this is not about meritocracy. This is all about survival of Ramaphosa. You know,
of
he's
course.
dug in the trenches with his mates, and that's what the cabinet reshuffle was about. Um, and you know, it's quite extraordinary at this time that they're doing that.
It's insane, Scott. You know, when they said they were going to reshuffle the cabinet, um, I I can't say that I had a huge amount of hope, but there was that small hope that the new cabinet would be announced and it was just really people that should be there, people that are qualified to be there. I thought that it's possible that Ramaphosa had woken up and that he would scoop all the idiots that are in the cabinet at the moment and put real people there. And when I saw what he had done, I was just, my heart just sank again,
Yeah,
because
it's just musical chairs. That's all it is. And when I saw the leader of the Democratic Alliance, John Steenhuisen, a couple of weeks ago, saying, "Oh, I'll put my hand up. I'll be one of your ministers," I thought, "What?"
yeah,
Absolutely extraordinary.
I don't understand
Yeah,
Steenhuisen. I mean,
yeah,
I was, at local level, I still support the DA. In fact, I was actually going to be a DA councillor at one stage, um, but I decided against it and I ran as an independent. But at national level, I've lost hope in the DA, to be quite honest.
yeah.
I just don't see them helping in any way, But anyway, I suppose that's all politics. And you know what my hope is? I'll watch all your live streams. Of course, most of them I get on too late, so I have to watch them afterwards. I believe the only hope left is, people have to either join General Isaac and his organization or join Colonel de Toy and his organization,
Saintlanders.
Suidlanders, and join the Cape Succession movement.
Yeah.
My biggest wish is that General Isaac, Colonel de Toy, and the Cape Succession movement would all form an alliance together.
Oh, they have. They have got an informal alliance. But what we will have to do is we'll have to get Des Palm or Hein Marks or what your the guy from the Cape Party, one of those guys on to give us an update on what's going with the secession movement. But I'll
Yeah,
speak to Melina about that. Yeah,
I think there's a lot of hope in that.
yeah,
Because other than that, I agree with what Colonel de Toy said last night. It's the South Africa. It isn't South Africa anymore, really, is it? Not the South Africa that we knew.
no, it's a mess.
Yeah, an absolute mess. But on the crime stats thing.
Yeah, before we do that, let me ask you this question, Rake. Did the
Yeah.
lockdown bring down the crime rate in South Africa?
Scott, South Africa scored a world first. Okay, once again.
Guess not in a good way.
Yeah, this is the ridiculous situation. Okay, the crime rate during the hard lockdown increased. Okay, now how? And I sit here and I go, when I was reading through all the stats, I was like, how is that even possible? But here are the actual facts. Okay, now we're only talking the first quarter of this year because they haven't brought out the second quarter stats. So when there was a hard lockdown, okay, truck hijackings were up by 25%, attempted murder up by 9%,
Wow.
murder up by 4%, robbery at residential, and you must remember that most of those are armed robberies at houses, went up 7.6%, carjackings up 5%, business robberies went through the roof.
Now, can I just
During
can I
mm,
just say that when you say those figures, let's remember that
yeah,
a lot of dockets, when people go and make complaints at police stations, are not opened. The police don't have any interest at all. So those figures are like probably just the tip of the iceberg. Please carry on.
yeah, no, I agree with you 100. Well, I know that firsthand because of what I was doing. I saw cases downgraded from break-ins to trespassing and stuff like that. So whatever figures we ever look at, and these are the police minister's own figures, okay? All right. So for them to be so high and so bad, you must know that it's probably double that, especially coming from him. Um, so yeah, whatever figures are thrown around, but everybody, I mean, I think South Africa was the only country in the world that had an increase in violent crime during a hard lockdown. I mean, it doesn't even make sense.
Well, I can tell you
So
how that worked, Drake. I can tell you how that worked. There were actually two lockdowns. There was one for the minority groups where the police were ever present and they were arresting elderly women walking their dogs in a totally vacant street. They were going after soft targets. But in the townships, life carried on as before. There was absolute that you couldn't have a lockdown. You had five families living in a room. There was no lockdown in the townships. There were no police in the townships. That's where the crime just exploded because people were hungry.
yeah, I mean that can only be sort of the real explanation for what happened. So you know, yeah, there was a chance because I thought, okay, lockdown would be a, bear in mind that I always think of crime, okay?
Yeah.
So lockdowns are not nice for many reasons, but I thought, okay, well, at least the crime rate will come right down. And when the stats came out, I nearly fell on my back. I just thought this is just nonsense. But you're right. South Africa's lockdown was a joke, really. You can't have a lockdown and taxis running at full capacity. Um,
It's a
you know,
very
and they,
smart virus. You've got to admit that. It doesn't matter whether you're in South Africa or whether you're in Australia or whether you're in America or whether you're in Europe. There are certain things that the virus doesn't do. For example, if you have a lockdown in Europe where you're not allowed to be out between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m., that's when the virus is rampant trying to find people. It's an extraordinary smart virus. I think we've got to accept that, or we've got to accept that the regulations that have been brought in by governments around the world are illogical. And I think the latter is the case.
yeah, a whole lot of it has been it's been crazy. For me, it's been very disappointing because I arrived here 3 years ago, and it takes a bit of time to get on your feet. And then we
Yeah,
were just planning on doing trips to France, Portugal, Spain. I wanted to go and surf in all those
yeah.
countries, and then this whole thing happened. So it's kind of been terrible. As you know, we've been trying to get this Portugal thing going, and the original property, the big farm of 73 hectares, we eventually lost it because everything was locked down. We couldn't get anything done.
Yeah.
But anyway, we on another property, and when we get that right, we'll have another live stream about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so going from lockdown crime to unlockdown, if you want to call it that, I'm afraid to say that it hasn't got any better.
I was going to ask you
There,
the question, is it possible to get crime under control in South Africa? Is it possible under an ANC government?
Under the circumstances now, no. It's impossible.
So it's
You
just
can't
going
do
to escalate. There's no other option.
It's going to escalate. You know, Magnus Haystack actually had a thing yesterday. Now, I tend to believe what he says because he's very clued up when it comes to finance, and then he was giving the figures of 1 trillion has been wiped off the listed property shares, etc., etc. Residential property on average has lost 25% of its value countrywide and stuff like that. But I know that's not crime, but it all leads to crime because we're talking now investors pulling their money out, creating more unemployment. So the unemployment is rising and rising and rising. Poverty is rising. People are hungry, which can only lead to a crime increase. The other reason why it's going to carry on increasing, the organized criminal syndicates. Now, we're talking about highly intelligent people. They saw what happened during these riots and burning and
Durban.
looting and
yeah.
Well, Durban and
well, KwaZulu-Natal.
I don't. Yeah, Natal and Transvaal, I think.
Gauteng. Yeah, Gauteng had a bit too.
I would imagine that these crime syndicates looked at this and saw how ineffective the police force actually is.
Yeah.
So I think they must be rubbing their hands going, gee whiz, look at this lot. Let's up our sort of organized crime because it's going to be easier. So there's no way out of this spiral of crime. I can only see it getting worse and worse and worse. And of course, with everything that's happening, I think a lot of people that joined the looting, robbing, whatever you want to call it, these are people that haven't had much, have suddenly realized this is easy. I can get a TV now, I can get a lounge suite, I can get boxes of food or whatever. I think the frightening thing is that they're going to see residential houses in the same light soon. You know, so when it becomes difficult to loot a warehouse, the looting hasn't finished, by the way. Day before yesterday, they were looting in Pinetown, Marion Ridge.
Yeah, I saw that.
And day before yesterday, they're still stopping trucks and looting them and everything else. So if the looting in Pinetown and that, or the looting of trucks had happened before the massive riots, it would have been news. But because the massive riots were so big, suddenly 3 trucks getting looted is not news anymore.
That's exactly what I was saying at the start. It's the scale of the crime. If the crime is a small crime where it used to be reported, no, it isn't. It's got to be a very, very big crime. Otherwise, it gets swept under the carpet.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, there was another, I think she was 83 years old. I could go on and on and on about what's happened just over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But she was at home alone. It wasn't a farmer. She was at home alone, and 4 of these violent thugs attacked her and strangled her, and and there's any amount of stories on the ongoing crime. The mainstream media are not really reporting that. You get the stories through social media. Yeah. I'm always very careful to sift through them, throw out the nonsense from the facts. When you look at the facts, it's horrible. I mean, so crime hasn't decreased, it's increased. Okay. Looting and that has now increased after the big riots, but because they suddenly are small stories, it's not been reported on. So what I'm saying is crime has increased. Looting, I prefer to call it mass robbery, has increased. The ongoing truck hijackings and ongoing truck looting or robberies, whatever you want to call it, has increased. The police force is in a mess. They've cut their budget. And I take my hat off to the residents of all the various suburbs for defending their suburbs.
Yeah, like Phoenix.
Yeah, like Phoenix, they did very well. A lot of people in my old suburb on the Bluff did very, very well. I was really proud of what they did there. However, Scott, here's the problem. Those looters that went to the suburbs, okay, those were just your people that had joined the looting.
Yeah, they weren't professionals.
Okay. They weren't professionals. Very few of them were armed unless they had sticks or pangas or whatever. So a handful of people shooting at them would have scared them off, of course. The next round's not going to be like that. These guys have seen how it works now. So the next round, you're going to have a lot more people. This is just my personal opinion. You're going to have a lot more people, so-called looters, armed. And I think when there's 10 or 20 community members standing there with guns, and suddenly they're confronted with 500 people with guns, I think it's going to be a different story. And I think this is basically what General Isaac and them are talking about and what they're readying themselves for, you know. So on the crime side, no, you know, from what I've seen from when I was there to what I'm looking at now, reading stats, following the trends, there's no end in sight, Scott. Unfortunately, it's going to get pretty bad. I think things are going to get hot. So everybody, like everybody says, join an organization, sure, but you need to join the bigger organizations like General Isaac and people like that.
Yeah.
If you to be effective, if there's going to be, let's supposing throughout the entire country, 20,000 little organizations made up of 50 people, that's a very scattered response, a very scattered defense. You need rather 100,000 people belong to one organization that is fully organized, has all the
Mobilized.
Communications.
You know, talking about communications, I was very impressed that Saitlanders are bringing out a radio station, so AM, so it'll go right across the country, so they can alert people as to what's going on. And I think that's a fantastic development.
Absolutely, it's an incredible development. My only, of course, as soon as I heard Colonel Du Toit say that, I had the same reaction as you. That's absolutely fantastic. Then the crime side of my brain kicked in, and I was thinking, okay, so if the shit hits the fan and Saitlanders kick into action and they start broadcasting on their radio telling people where to go, the enemy's going to be listening to that radio. So they need to, I don't know, I don't even know if that's possible.
I'm sure they've got a way to get around that.
Yeah, I hope so, because otherwise you're going to be broadcasting to the enemy what your plans are. So, no, good on them. I was actually glad, because I was also losing faith in the Saitlanders, but I think Colonel Du Toit explained a lot last night. So
I think Colonel Du Toit has brought basically brought Saitlanders up to a position where it's now serving a more powerful purpose for defending people, because he's got that military background. Now, I just talking about communications, I put up a video about 2 weeks ago, and I was sent this PDF by someone who I know, and what they had actually done is they had collated on this PDF the WhatsApp messages that were being sent out leading up to the looting in Durban. And you had the phone numbers of the people who were actually saying, we're going to be attacking this warehouse and this road at this time. Join us under this bridge at 3 a.m. and from there we'll head off and do all those messages were in this PDF, and you have the phone numbers and their nicknames and stuff like that on this PDF. None of those people have been arrested, and clearly WhatsApp was used to instigate the looting that took place in Durban a few weeks ago. Now, this is they talk about social media and someone saying something that uses the K word, okay? So they use something on social media that uses a K word, and the next thing they're before the Equality Court, they're before the Human Rights Commission, all these sort of things are thrown at them for using the K word in social media. But then what you've got are these criminals who are coordinating their looting, and nothing is done about it. Now, what is worse? Someone using the K word when they might be drunk, or having an organized group looting a warehouse. And yet the response by the police is just ridiculous.
Well, this is it. I think any crime that you commit on WhatsApp, if it's stated as a crime and under the police laws, has to be investigated and action must be taken. But exactly what you're saying now, it's very selective. I saw some of the WhatsApps that were going around while the looting was going on, and voice messages and stuff like that were basically inciting people to kill people. And yet, like you say, those people haven't been arrested. So, well, again, that's what makes me think that there's no end in sight to this. Whether they haven't been arrested because the police are incompetent, or whether the police have been told not to arrest those people, is another story, So, I agree with you. The sort of a smaller crime goes heavily punished, but a crime actually calling on people to kill people goes unpunished completely. That's where we are in South Africa, So it's absolutely terrible, and I just can't see any end in sight. I'm sorry if I keep looking down. I've got a couple of cheat notes, crib notes, whatever you want to call them.
Now,
because otherwise I'll forget.
That brings me to the next point. Immigration is the hot topic right now in South Africa, and we talked about real estate and how the property prices are collapsing. And it's interesting that the Real Estate Association in South Africa say that something like 40 to 50% of people who are selling their houses in South Africa right now are doing so because they are leaving the country. That's a huge brain drain, because these are people who've got money, they're successful, they've got businesses, they employ people, they have skills that are useful for the economy and for the country. They're leaving. Now, this is very, very disturbing, and it's not talked about.
No, the exodus now, after the mass riots and everything, the stats that you're talking about are actually 100% correct. People were leaving in their droves before the mass riots. But here's the thing, because I got to know so many people, not just in my suburb, in many suburbs around Durban, since the mass rioting, I cannot even count the amount of emails and messages I've had from people. These were people that thought just like I did 13 years ago. These were people that said they will never leave. I cannot tell you how many people have contacted me to say, look, they realize that it's over now and they're making plans. These are people that do qualify to get into the UK.
Right.
And I would imagine there's a hell of a lot more making the move to Australia and America if they can get in. So the brain drain, the business drain, and again, because I'm wired up to think about crime, will lead to higher crime rates. And you get you will find the only people besides your sort of hardened, because the we talk about Boer or Afrikaans or English. Um, to me, everybody's in the same boat. But you'll get your diehard farmers, and I can understand why they don't want to give up their farms and that, and they will stay. But every now and again, an email will circulate saying that everything's going to be wonderful in South Africa and everybody must stay. And when you look at who wrote that email, it'll be more than likely a very wealthy person that has businesses that doesn't want to lose their customers. Um, and, it's even gone down to sort of one or two YouTubers are saying don't leave because they're going to lose their viewers, So the only people I see saying don't leave are the people that have are going to suffer financially, um, like your big real estate companies and,
Yeah.
and things like that.
Well, look,
So,
the tourism industry is dead in South Africa now, and I just want to just talk to what you were saying there.
yeah,
Before we went live last night with Colonel Venant du Toit, I actually posted um, the link on a couple of Facebook groups, and after doing that a couple of times, Facebook said, "Nah, you can't do this anymore." But one of the ones that I put it on was a big group called I'm Staying. They actually
nah,
blocked that post because they said we do not accept any post that puts South Africa in a negative light. Now, don't you think that's blinkering the actual views of the people who are watching or follow that group?
yeah. I don't understand how people even believe that group anymore, to be quite honest. I think the guy that started it originally had very good intentions. Um, I haven't gone into it much, but I think it's been captured, to be quite honest. And like you have a live stream now, if I disagree with you on something, or you don't like what I say, or um, you're not going to cancel me. We might have a difference of opinion on
Sure.
something, and then we'll carry on talking.
Yeah.
If like that organization you mentioned, if you say anything good about South Africa, like you say, they delete you. All it tells me is they got something to hide. Um, to not let people have an opinion
It
is
smacks
well,
of
we know
YouTube. Let's put it that way. Now,
it smacks of YouTube, and it
yeah,
smacks of that organization's been captured. I know other organizations that have been captured. Um, there was another one. I can't remember its name. They used to go to the UK and go to Australia and try and convince South Africans to go back to South Africa. I think it's still going, actually. And then it was eventually bought out by I think it was First National Bank. And it was exactly the same thing.
yeah.
It kind of been captured. I wouldn't believe them. Um, so yeah, a lot of people want to stay. God, I don't blame them. What a beautiful country's got. I remember talking about before things went to hell. There's one thing I remember very well. I've surfed my whole life, and we used to actually sleep on the beach for a whole weekend. We didn't go home.
Oh, wow. I remember those days. Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely,
it
yeah.
was
I mean, what a
incredible.
life. And you hear the surf right next to you. It's just beautiful. Now, look, we were talking about immigration. There's a
Yeah,
point
sorry,
I
we
just
went on.
want to, yeah, I just want to bring up with the people who are listening. And please, guys, your questions for Rake, please put them in the side chat, and I'll put those to him later. And please, while I'm talking to the side chat and people listening, please remember to register on Loving Life LovingLifeTV.com, the platform we are transitioning to. I see we've got 30 guests on there right now. Please, guys, you've got to actually register. Then you get the daily update email. You get information about the live streams we have every night here on Loving Life. And if you're on Loving Life on YouTube, please subscribe there. Now, getting back to the point that I was going to make is that we're now in a position in Australia where 500,000 temporary residents have left the country. We've actually had a population drop of 2.5% in Australia since the lockdown. 2.5%. No one's talking about this, but it's factual. And what's happened is that the borders are so tight now for people to come into Australia that very, very few actually are able to come in. There are very few flights flying into Australia from overseas now. And
Yes.
we've had this huge drain, not so much a brain drain, but a labor force drain from the country. And it's causing trouble because there's something like 1 million jobs that have been advertised in Australia, and they can't find anyone to do those jobs. So the message is to people from South Africa who are listening now, yes, I know Australia's got its issues with this bloody lockdown. Believe me, I know what we're talking about there. But the crime rate is just about non-existent in Australia. So you've got a safe place for your family. They can go and play in the park. You can go and walk your dog at 10 o'clock at night. As Rake was saying, you can in the UK. But the point I'm making is that when we come out of this, and this is my message to people who are trying to get out of South Africa and normally wouldn't be able to because of financial or other means, think about this. 500,000 people, they're going to be wanting to attract people back into Australia. And I can tell you that the sort of jobs that they'll be looking for people, or the careers that people are in, nurses, doctors, professional people, people who've got small businesses, anyone who can actually contribute positively to the Australian economy. There's going to be a huge rollout of people, opportunity to come and stay in Australia once this madness is over. So I'm just flagging that for people who are wanting to get out of South Africa and come to a safer place to stay. Now, talking about staying or going, really the pivotal question, Rake, and I'm putting this to you, is should South Africans stay or should they go? Now, let's remember that a lot of people have got family, they're elderly, they really have got no option but to stay, and I understand that. I get that, and I absolutely get that. But I'm talking about people who have that option, that they're sitting on the fence. When things get better, should I stay in South Africa or should I leave South Africa? What's your advice to them?
One word: go. Okay. I agree 100% with what you're saying, Scott. There are people that just can't immigrate, be it to the UK, Australia, or anywhere else. So those people, not all is lost for them, because there are exactly the organisations that we've been talking about, and I think the Cape is the best option. But for anybody, especially people with children that can immigrate and you don't, I honestly don't understand that.
With your children's education, I mean, that's no-brainer, isn't it?
Well, the education, I mean, what I've seen here in the UK, I mean, you'll always have people say, oh, it's worse in the UK or it's worse in Australia, and that's just nonsense, because they've heard a story from someone whose auntie told them the story, etc., etc. Yeah. The education in the UK, and I'd imagine it's the same, if not better, in Australia.
Australia's got an amazing. I tell you what's so wonderful about the lucky country in lockdown. What's so wonderful about Australia is that over many years, people who are highly skilled in medicine, in teaching, in all these different professions have come to Australia because it's always been seen as the lucky country. So our
Oh,
education
yeah.
system in Australia is amazing. I mean, it's absolutely amazing, and it's stable. The classroom sizes are small; they're not big. And one of the professions I forgot to mention is if you're a teacher, once this lockdown's over, they're going to be looking for teachers here in Australia. Yeah, sorry, back to you, Ray.
Yeah. No, you're 100%. Scott, in fact, there's a very good bluff friend of mine that I used to surf with. He's a lot younger than me. That I used to surf with back on the bluff. I'm in Newquay in Cornwall. I actually went round to his place the day before yesterday. He's here in Newquay. He's a teacher, doing very, very well for himself because teachers are respected,
Yes, they are.
here.
Yeah,
They're highly regarded. And the children here, man, and I can't talk about the big cities, okay, because you always get someone saying, oh, but in London, oh, but in London. I'm not in London. I'm in Cornwall. And I'd heard before I came across here that the children have no manners and they swear at you and everything. No, it's not true. The children here in Cornwall, the school children, are so well educated and so well mannered. Here's the thing in the UK, okay, that the children get given lunch at school. Okay, it's kind of quite a crazy situation. But when they went into lockdown, those lunches were delivered to their houses, so they weren't at school, but they were still given their lunch every day.
yeah,
The kids are very, very well looked after. Yeah, when I look at the facilities for children just down the road from me, I'm talking sporting facilities and play fields, and it's just absolutely endless.
yeah,
Skateboard parks. So yes, if anybody, especially people with children, if you can immigrate to any country, you I can't say you have to go, but I'm asking you to really, really consider leaving South Africa now. 13 years ago, if you had said that to me, I would have got very angry with you. I wouldn't have been happy with that statement.
yeah,
I will shout it from rooftops after having come across here purely on a fact-finding mission. Okay, I hadn't decided to immigrate fully. Having lived here now for 3 years, in fact, the day before yesterday was exactly 3 years, and having seen how people live, and especially families, man, if just what I always, when people are very, very undecided, I always say to them, yes, it'll cost you a lot of money, but if there's a miracle in South Africa, which I doubt, but let's just hope there's a miracle and everything comes right, you can always go back to South Africa. Okay, you'll always
yes.
have that option.
I would be going back.
Yeah, but if you're in South Africa, when things blow up and the country burns
Yeah,
to the ground, it's too late.
yeah,
Okay, then it's too late for you. So I would rather people be in a place where they're safe with the option of going back to South Africa if they
yes,
want to, than suddenly find themselves in a position. A lot of Rhodesians found themselves in that position. So to answer your question, yes, and that goes. It's not just for children. I mean, I'm 58 years old, and people say, "Oh, you can't immigrate when you sort of over 50." It's difficult in that. No, I disagree. And Scott, what you were saying about the jobs, we in the UK, a very similar situation has developed now, to the point where a lot of the restaurants haven't been able to reopen, not because they've got no money, because they've got no staff.
right,
Tourism businesses are battling to get staff. Huge shortage here, and this is for South Africans, okay? Huge shortage here of truck drivers, okay? And truck drivers are paid such good salaries over here. It's scary. there's such a shortage of truck drivers at the moment that food and that is not reaching where it should. Well, not just
So,
food, but
so what we're saying, Rake, is that if you're a truck driver in South Africa, you're worried about, you know, you driving your truck because of what's happening in that country. You've got a young family. What they should be doing is
yeah,
going online and looking for job opportunities in the UK in the trucking industry. Now, we in Australia have a website. I'm actually going to put it into the side chat here. It's called seek.com.au. There we are. I've said employment in Australia, seek.com.au. That is the biggest website in Australia, which gives thousands of jobs that are being, employers are looking for people, and it covers
yeah,
everything. So if someone is considering leaving South Africa, and look, as I say, we're in a hard lockdown in Australia, but there's no harm in actually just putting some questions out there to people who might be interested in what you can offer. Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to mention is that I know exactly what you're talking about when it comes to this hard decision that parents must make. Back in the early 1960s, when my dad was in his early 40s, when Tanzania became independent and the British embassy warned white people in Tanzania that, look, it's time to get out, especially if you've got young children. And my parents uprooted and they moved to South Africa. We lived in absolutely poverty type conditions for years while they tried to reestablish themselves. And
yeah.
so I know that there's this hard time that you go through. But the option they made was the correct one, because we had a very good education in South Africa, whereas if we'd stayed in Tanzania, I wouldn't know how to count up to 10, quite honestly, because there was no education system there. So yeah, look, it's a hard decision to make, but when you look back in 10 years' time, you'll say, wow, just imagine if I hadn't done this, my kids would have been, you know, yeah, you got to think about your kids. Okay,
100% stuff.
now let's get back to the crime issue, because this is really what is destroying South Africa. Um,
Mm.
what is driving crime in South Africa?
Um, Many factors. Obviously, unemployment and poverty are big factors, and that would mainly be your sort of smaller crimes. But unfortunately, even those petty criminals are armed, and if cornered, they will kill you. There's no two ways about it. The second thing that's driving crime is obviously your organized criminals, because it's so easy for them to get away with what they're doing. The police do a fantastic job with what they've got. I mean, they do make a lot of arrests, but on the whole, I mean, how often do you hear of a big crime syndicate boss being arrested in South Africa? You'll hear about the little guy that climbed up the light pole and stole some copper cable, but you don't ever hear about the big crime syndicate bosses being arrested in South Africa. And thirdly, and it's something that I really believe, it's political, because a lot of the politicians are in with these syndicates,
So the
and
police.
they're making huge. Yeah, a lot of police are. I mean, yeah, I could tell you stories, and that's another whole thing. But I'll give you a small example of what happened in our suburb. Now, we had, and there are still fantastic policemen there. One of our community policing members actually filmed one of the SAP guys. He was drunk. Was actually quite horrendous. But he didn't say anything. He didn't lay charges. He didn't put it on Facebook or social media. He did it in the right way. He took it to the police station. He was that same community policing member was arrested the next day and thrown in the cells.
What?
Okay, yeah, yeah, he was arrested, and the recording of what he had recorded was gone, and there was actually a Thursday. By the Friday afternoon, he still hadn't been let out, and I got hold of a police captain, an Indian guy that was just absolutely incredible, and he got hold of me and he said the docket's gone. It was sent to the wrong police station because this community policing member had to appear in court by about 3 on Friday afternoon. Otherwise, he was going to sit the entire weekend. So anyway, this Indian police captain helped us. He tracked the docket down that was sent to the courts, and we all rushed off to the courts at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and he was given bail. So at least he didn't have to sit the whole weekend. But that was his reward for recording a police member that was horribly drunk. So you can understand why a lot of community policing members are very nervous. And what I've noticed lately is, and I won't mention the name of the group because they're very good, they put out crime stories and crime news on a regular basis, but slowly it's swung. There's less and less and less crime incidents in their newsletters, and more of the police successes. So I know from my own experience, I'm assuming now that pressure's been put on them to stop reporting the actual incidents,
Yeah.
So yeah, it becomes very difficult, sir. I think I went right off topic there. What we were actually talking about before I went off in a tangent.
I'll tell you where I'd like to head this conversation now, and that is to do with something that Colonel Vainant du Toit raised yesterday or last night
Yeah.
in the live stream, and that was to do with the safe areas of South Africa, and in particularly he referenced the Northern Cape. Now, one of the things that has been talked about, and I raised this at the very start of the live stream, is secession of the Western Cape. Now, clearly, secession is a much better solution for people who want to stay in South Africa. Having a part of South Africa just completely cut off from the rest of South Africa and saying, okay, we're independent, we're going to now rebuild using meritocracy like they do in Singapore, and we're going to build a fantastic new country. Let the guys up in Gauteng, the ANC, let them do what they like. We're going to look after our patch of turf. Now, what are your thoughts about that option for South Africans who just realize that there's certain parts of South Africa that are just too far gone?
Scott, I'm such a believer in the whole Cape exit strategy and the ULA, but I think the area the ULA is looking at is just far too big. It's not really doable. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I prefer Cape exit strategy.
Yeah, I've spoken to Hein Marks about that weird little piece that shoots up into the Gauteng area and then comes back down again. It's I don't know how you would manage that.
If you do succeed, whichever area that the people are going to be in, there's a very good chance that you're going to have to defend that area for a while.
Yeah.
So ULA's borders are going to be very, very difficult. But I mean, you know what? Anybody that's working towards that, it's a good thing. So I'll take my hats off to ULA, Cape Exit, and anybody else that's working towards that. Yeah. But to answer your question, yes, that to me that's such a brilliant option for South Africans that can't or don't want to leave. And if I was still in South Africa, I think I would have already made plans to move to the Cape and support Cape Exit and help them get to the point where they can actually finalize their plans. because I can't see any other way anymore. Just bear in mind, Scott, that this comes from a person that 13 years ago was so fiercely patriotic and believed that we could turn the situation around, to today where I'm sitting in the UK saying it's over. So if you can immigrate, you need to do so. And believe me, I know people always say the grass is not greener on the other side and this and that. I can tell you it is. We had got so used to living like we did that we didn't know what the other side was like.
Yeah.
And when I experienced it, to be quite honest, I was just completely blown away. But going back to succession, yes, because personally I only see 3 options left now, and that is immigration, succession, and I used to say, or suffering. I don't like to use that, so I would rather say your 3 options now: immigration, succession, or gambling. And when I say gambling, is because if you don't do any of those things, either immigrate or succeed, or at least try, you then start gambling. And the chips that you are playing with are your family. Okay, you need to understand that everything that happens going forward in South Africa from now is a gamble, because everybody says, but what if this, what if that, what if that? Okay, everything is a what if in the future, certainly over the next 10 years. And if you're playing with what ifs, it means you're gambling, and your family are the chips that you're gambling with. I know it sounds hard, but this is fact. I've seen so many people and heard the same story over and over, oh, but the ANC will come under 50% in the next election. And that's very possible. But here's the result of the ANC coming under 50%. The country will burn. What we saw over the last couple of weeks will look like child's play compared to what will happen to South Africa if the ANC thinks it's going to lose power. And this is not coming from me. This comes from ANC members themselves. They have said many, many times that if they come under 50%, they will burn the country. And they have the members and they have the support to do that. So I hope people are looking at this. The people that go, the future is going to be good because the ANC is going to come under 50%, besides the fact that they'll just form an alliance with the EFF and they'll be over 50% again. But even if the two of them together combined came under 50%, there will be unrest like you have never seen in that country. We saw, I can't remember what Robert Mugabe's party was called in Zimbabwe. Was it ZANU-PF?
ZANU-PF, I think, yeah.
We saw what happened when he thought he was going to lose. And again, this is not coming from me. It's coming from ANC members themselves. So then people say, I'm just going over the options because we're heading towards succession or immigration.
Right.
So then people say to me, oh no, but if we get all the opposition parties together to form a coalition, then things might be all right. They can't, because all the opposition parties, I'm talking the normal ones, not the radical EFFs and things like that. All the opposition parties combined make up about 25% of the vote. I'm talking outside the Western Cape.
Yeah.
So that's not going to help. Unfortunately, the DA and all the other smaller parties, they can't help you anymore. As far as I'm concerned, there is no political solution anymore. You can go to the polls and vote for whoever you want. I can't see any good coming of it. So to go back, as far as I'm concerned, the options are up now. So if you can immigrate. Don't even think about it. Start planning it and go now, because if you don't and the country burns to the ground, you're going to regret it. if you don't want to immigrate or can't immigrate, at least start the process. Contact Cape Exit. Start supporting them. Get involved with them. Or get hold of General Isaac, or get hold of Colonel Du Toit. You need to start making a plan now.
Yeah. Now,
So,
just on that, the point of moving down to the Western Cape,
yes.
what are the signals, as far as you're concerned, that it's time to get out? If you're in, let's say, Pretoria or Johannesburg or Durban or one of the other provinces where things start going really pear-shaped, at what point in time should you say, okay, this is untenable? The next step is they're going to come in and they're going to, break into our house and, da 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 da. What is the point where people should say, hey, we got to move, we got to go to the Western Cape?
Scott, that point has come and gone. For we, as humans, we accept and get used to things. 20 years ago, people were saying, if it gets any worse, I'm immigrating, or I'm moving to a safer place, and things got worse. And 10 years ago, people were saying, if it gets any worse, I'm immigrating, or I'm moving to a safer place, and things got worse. And 5 years ago, people were saying the same thing. And one of the main sayings, excuse me, and again, excuse the language, but it's the saying that everybody says, when the shit hits the fan, I'm going to immigrate, or I'm going to move to a safer place, or I'm going to make another plan. If what happened over the last couple of weeks wasn't shit hitting the fan, then if then I don't know, to be quite honest. So the point of thinking about when is enough, it's gone. Okay, that it's got to have been enough to anybody. Surely you are locked up in your own home at night. You're scared that your children might get killed, or something might happen to your wife. 24 hours a day, you're worried about that. You go to the shopping centers, you don't know what's going to happen. You might get robbed. You break down on the highway, you're in big trouble. Okay, you seriously, because that's one crime that has increased drastically. You break down on the highway, the chances of being robbed, attacked, and hopefully not killed, but some have been killed, are very high. And then you get this mass burning, looting, my gosh, whatever you want to call it, anarchy. There isn't a strong enough word for it. If you didn't see that and say, okay, enough is enough now, it means that you've got so used to it, like I was. Okay, so I'm not saying you stupid or anything, because I was in that position. I stood, it's absolutely insane if you think that I would stand next to dead bodies, people that had been shot, and people around us would be laughing and joking and stuff. That's insane. That's not normal.
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody in South Africa has been dumbed down. They've been desensitized. But what happened over the last couple of weeks surely has got to have made people say, okay, enough is enough. I know it has, because of the amount of people that have contacted me to say, okay,
yeah,
I'm out of here. By the way, a lot are heading your way, Scott. I didn't realize that there were so many people that actually qualified to get into Australia still. A lot of my friends are heading to Australia. A lot of them are heading to the UK. Right. And that kind of things. So to answer your question, that point of when is enough is gone.
Right. Now, Mel F has said something which I think a lot of people would be saying privately. She says, I'm staying right where I am at this stage. At least I can sleep at night without getting a panic attack. Now, I guess all I would say, now Mel is one of our moderators, and she's one of our close Loving Life family. And I get exactly what she's saying. I guess the point we're trying to make here is that there are still some options when the shit hits the fan. One is to move down to the Northern Cape, the Western Cape, and even if you just got your car and you pack it up with stuff, at least you can, escape. And the other option is to get out of the country completely. Um, yeah,
Yes.
my heart goes out to all these people who just, they just, it's like you're stuck. You you're living in this this mirage when there's so much
Yeah.
shit going on around you. It's just it's and you mentioned about this friend of yours whose wife was raped when he went out to the shop. I mean, it's only when something like that happens that people get the wake up call that, hey, this isn't normal. It's
It,
terrible.
and then it's heartbreaking, Scott. And then it's too late. You see. So um, I agree a lot with people like Mel F. Where does Mel F live in South Africa?
I'm not sure. I don't think it's a Western Cape though.
Okay, because there are. I'm pretty sure that especially people that live in the sort of far out places are
Oh no, hang
relatively
on.
safe.
Mel F lives in Ireland.
Okay, well,
Okay,
his
that
friend is
is
a
why she would stay put. Okay, now okay. She says that's why she's going to
yeah.
stay put. I
Okay,
apologize,
that's
Mel.
that.
I thought, of course, you live in Ireland. I just had one of those blonde moments. Um, okay,
Yeah, well, that would make sense because I mean, it's summer here in the UK now, um, and believe me, it gets
yeah,
really really hot in summer. In fact, we've had a terrible heat wave.
yeah.
We've got no burglar gods, Scott. So I'm backing up what Mel F is saying. I sleep. I honestly do. I sleep with my windows wide open at
Yeah.
night. Okay,
Well,
no
I
burglar.
leave my door open,
Yeah, I can quite believe that.
and there's never been a problem.
Yeah. So Malef, good on you. Yes, stay where you are. Sleep well.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah. It was something else that just slipped my mind. But anyway, sorry, Scott. You
Okay,
carry
now,
on.
yeah, now looking at South Africa, what are the future political options for the country?
Um, from my own personal points of view, there are none because I cannot see a political party that can help you. Um, unless you're an ANC supporter and a bigwig in the ANC, and you're going to score out of what's coming. I can't, and I'm not running. I'm not a political person, to be quite honest. I'm not running any political party down, but I can't see how a political party can help you, um, because like I said, the smaller parties just don't have the power and never will have the power.
Yeah,
Um, so if that's the question you're asking me, I can't. No political party can help you. You need to start joining people like organizations, in other words, that can help you.
yeah, like Boer Alician and Saitlanders, etc.
Yes,
Yeah,
those are the answers now.
they're,
Forget about the political parties.
they're really like
Or
this. They're really like the security blanket, aren't they? I mean, you know that you've got something there that you can fall back on.
yes, yeah. I mean, let's put it this way. Let's supposing, um, because it will happen again. Let's when mass rioting and that starts happening again. Um, who are you going to phone for help? Are you going to phone John Steenhuisen and ask him to come help you, or are
Good
you going
luck
to
with that.
phone? Yeah, or you're going to phone General Isaac or Colonel DeToy to come help you. If you must remember, you need to belong to those organizations if you expect their help.
Yeah,
Okay. So what I'm saying, and again, I'm not running the political party itself down, is when stuff like that happens, you can't phone the DA or any other political party to help you because they can't help you. But you can phone Suidlanders or Boer Legion or Cape Exit if you're already in the Cape to help you. So
Yeah.
I think everybody's focus needs to move away from political parties to organizations.
Yeah.
And join those organizations.
Now, Fiona Timms has said, please tell Rake,
It's good.
my nephew lost his job as an airline pilot with Cathay Pacific and has brought his family back to live in the Cape, even though his wife is Canadian. Well, I think that's a bad move. But anyway, I can understand the Cape is beautiful.
Absolutely.
And she does say he wants to be near his parents and brother. Clearly, they have no idea what's going down in South Africa. Now, Rake, I've got a couple of questions here that have come through the side chat. I'm going to wrap up this live stream soon. We've been going for 90 minutes. It's amazing how time flies when you're having fun.
I could talk all night on the subject. Yeah.
Now, Tokolosh has asked, please ask your guest how 1.5 million new people in the Cape would be able to cope financially in a place that makes money from having parliament and diplomats in town.
I think the person that asked that question, I forgot their name, sorry.
It's Tokolosh.
Tokolosh.
That little guy wanders around and freaks out the Zulus.
Tokolosh, yeah, I like that. No, that's not true at all. The Cape has, my gosh, it's got resources like you can't believe. Just the tourism alone in the Cape, if it succeeded, you must remember it would then become a very safe country. The tourism alone would bring in huge amounts of money. What you must remember as well is that everybody in the Cape is paying tax, right? I stand to be corrected on this, Scott, but so billions are paid in tax and are paid over to the national government, and they're only given 20% of that back. Okay, so for every R1,000 you pay in tax, if you're in the Cape, only, what did I say, 20%, so only R200 comes back to you, not to you personally, to the government, the provincial government. That money alone, if I remember correctly, I think it was someone from Cape Exit said, if all the tax that you paid stayed in the Cape and wasn't given to national government, that money alone would probably go a very long way in sustaining the Cape. Then you've got tourism, okay, you've got minerals in the Cape, you've got the harbours. It's endless. The Cape would flourish. I honestly believe the Cape would become one of the richest countries in the world, and very, very quickly, if it was its own separate country.
It would become another Singapore if you had meritocracy in there and very, very severe punishment for any corruption in government. That's what they did in Singapore, and wow, did that work. Now, Michaela, she's got a very interesting story, Michaela. She met a fellow through Loving Life who lives in the US. Michaela lives in the Cape, and they actually got married. They're married now.
Oh, brilliant.
And from time to time, Michaela flies back to the Cape to see her family. And she said, exactly, didn't realize how badly us South Africans suffer from PTSD. After 6 months away and back in South Africa, I realized just how terrible things are here. I think that's what you were speaking to, what you said earlier about you don't realize how your life has been restricted and trodden on.
Absolutely. Michaela's 100% correct, because that's my story. Scott, I couldn't, honestly, I couldn't. I must send you that article, and maybe you can put it up on your Loving Life TV under the articles. I think that explains what Michaela's explaining. I had no idea. I honestly had no idea that people lived in this kind of safety. So I agree with what Michaela's saying, and that's what I'm saying to everybody. At least do what I did and come
Yeah.
across on a fact-finding mission. At least do that, you know.
Now, Rake, you've just raised about the forums. You're a registered member of Loving Life TV, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay. You can actually put an article up in the forums, and we've got one, I think, that is, well, there are a couple there that are pretty perfect. There's one called This and That, and there's another forum called Gatvol. I think there's one called South Africans Leaving South Africa as well. But there are a number of forums. What I'd ask you to do, because you can do this as a registered member of Loving Life TV, you can go and post your article into that forum. And
Okay, brilliant.
what'll happen is that as part of the process with our daily broadcast email, that that article will actually be in that broadcast email with the title and a direct link to your article. So you'll get your story out to tens of thousands of people by just putting it up in the forum. And just while I'm talking about the forum, guys, please, you don't realize how powerful this forum is becoming. If you've got a message to put out there, put it in the forum on lovinglifetv.com. It's a fantastic resource, and Nat is doing a great job with the forum. Now, Rake, we've
Brilliant.
basically covered, I think, the major aspects of the discussion tonight. Is there something you'd like to say to people who are watching this video now or who might watch it later, a message you have for South Africans? And perhaps let's end on a positive note. What are the positive things that could happen in South Africa? Over to you.
Yeah, thanks to yourself, Scott, and everybody that's been watching tonight. I sometimes, after being on the live streams, then I rewatch them, and I myself go, gee, I was full of negativity, but at the end of the day, it's reality. The positives I see that are happening in South Africa right now are the Cape Exit movement, and they seem to be getting very close to the point where they can hold a referendum. So to me, that's very, very positive. And believe me, I'll certainly be the first one on holiday there if they get that right. The second, all the other positives that I see are that organizations like Suidlanders, Boerlegion and all that are now being taken seriously, and people are joining them. And I think they're going to go a long way in helping the whole situation in South Africa. So for those that can't or don't want to immigrate, all is not lost. Okay, but look yourself. I'm going to ask you the same question that Scott has just asked me. You need to look at what is positive. And I'm not talking in your day-to-day life, because there's always positives in everybody's day-to-day life, whether you live in South Africa, the Congo, Afghanistan. You'll always have positives in your day-to-day life. But going forward, looking over the next 5 to 10 years, look for the positive things that are happening there. And that would be Cape Exit, possibly ULA, if they would maybe scale down what they want. And like I said, Boerlegion, and there must be any amount. One huge positive that I've seen, and a lot of it's been due to you, Scott, and your channel, is people coming together to help feed the farmers and take food to people that are starving and thhave like that. So those are the positive things that I can see happening up. And I may have missed. There might be something that's even more positive that I may have missed. But South Africa is a beautiful country, one of the most beautiful countries in the world. There's no doubts about that. So if you really feel strongly that you're not going to immigrate, don't sit in your house waiting for something to happen or not to happen. look for those positive organizations, because those are the positive things that are happening, and join them. That's basically all I can really think of saying on that subject, Scott.
Right. Well, I just want to add to that, Rake, by saying that if there was a change in government to something that resembled a democratic government, which was not corrupt in South Africa, or if the Western Cape seceded from the rest of South Africa and, became a separate country, I would be one of the first people to fly back to South Africa with the intention of settling, because my heart and my soul is in Africa. I was born in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, grew up in South Africa. I miss South Africa terribly, and the last time I flew into South Africa, as I approached the coast, I could just feel this. It was like a spiritual joining with the country. It was so powerful, just seeing what I feel is my homeland, and I feel like I'm a refugee in another country. Although I love Australia and I've been here many, many years now, I wouldn't hesitate to go back to South Africa. And I think I'm talking for millions of expat South Africans. If you got a government in place, and if the crime rate was sorted and all these things were sorted, they would come in their droves, and that country would just blossom, because you'd have all these brains coming back, all that money coming back into the Western Cape area. It would just turn that part of the world around.
I agree 100%, Scott. The Tokolosh that asked about what would create money in the Cape, I think the first thing that would create money is you'd have to build about another 50 airports to accommodate all the people flying back into the Cape, And
think of all the property prices would be going through the roof.
Would go crazy. You'd get international investors just pouring.
Yeah.
So that to me, I think is positive. I think the Cape Exit movement is going to get that right. So I agree with you 100%, Scott.
All right, fantastic. Rake, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a pleasure having you on again.
No, thank you for having me, Scott.
Right, now...
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah. I just want to thank the moderators for looking after the side chat. I see we did have a couple of trolls who passed through, but who were quickly passed out again. And I just want to thank the people who've joined us tonight, people who are not familiar with Loving Life. Thank you for joining our live stream. Please do consider subscribing to our Loving Life channel on YouTube and the lovinglifetv.com platform that we are transitioning to. And it's the membership there, the registered membership is just exploding, which is fantastic. Because on the lovinglifetv.com platform, we are not censored by big tech, by YouTube. I've got videos up there, several a day, on lovinglifetv.com that I cannot put up on YouTube because they would attract community strikes and result in my Loving Life channel being pulled down. It's called censorship, but that's the reality of the situation, and that's why we have lovinglifetv.com. Alrighty, I'm going to wrap up the live stream now. I'll leave the side chat open for a few minutes so people can say their goodbyes, and have a great evening. And don't forget, tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Johannesburg time, we'll be having another live stream on a different subject, and would love to see you there to come and join us. Bye for now.
Thanks, Scott. Cheers, everybody.
Ons gesterwe, so ons vry kan wees. Die is my land, die is my reg. Hier is ek boer. Stop is ek gemaak en sal ek terugkeer. Die Bybel is die woord waaruit ek leer. Soos die grond op die aarde. Hier bly ek boer. my aankom. Maar hier bly ek staan en ek draai nie om, want jy maak my nie bang nie. Hier bly ek boer. Die is my land waarvoor ek sal veg. Die is my bloed, my sweet, my reg. Die is die plek waar my voorvaders leef. Die is my land, hoor wat ek jou sê. Die is my land, wat my mense voer. Hier bly ek voor. Soos blaasom in die somer wat vreugde bring. My oupa wat maniekiero kon sing, soos hy stap deur die lande. Hier was hy boer. My wortels lê diep in die grond geplant. Hy sien soos my pa, los ek vir jou die land, en jy hoef nie te vrees nie. Hier sal jy boer. My land waarvoor ek sal veg. Die is my bloed, my sweet, my reg. Die is die plek waar my voorvaders leef. Die is my land, hoor wat ek jou sê. Die is my land, wat my mense voer. Hier bly ek voor. Die sal kom. Sal kom, die leeu 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 sal kom.